Yes! Welcome in once again to Straight to the Chase here on the Fantasy Baseball Advice Network. I am your host, Chase Thornton, coming to you once again from the Mott and Bailey Basement Bar. And today, we are donning the tools of ignorance and counting down the top 12 fantasy catchers you need to be drafting in 2025. Now, whether you play in roto and category formats or points leagues, these are the 12 guys who are going to be start-worthy backstops all season long. We guarantee it. Okay, now that's a soft guarantee. There's no fine print contracts or any, legal disclaimers or anything. But at any rate, we are here to help you find your bearings as you navigate the catcher wasteland in fantasy. Okay, before we get started, I want to remind you, hit like and subscribe. Make sure you're getting notifications whenever we drop new content here so we can continue to get you ready for fantasy baseball season and so you can chase greatness all season long and dominate your league mates. You can find past episodes of Straight to the Chase wherever you get your podcasts, so be sure to download us on your favorite podcast app. Now listen, we have pitchers and catchers in camp, people. Cubs were there on Super Bowl Sunday. The Dodgers were there a couple days later. By the time you hear this, we'll have had 20 more teams reporting on Wednesday, February 12th. The rest, including my Brewers here, will be there by the 13th. So, what do you say? Hey, we crack one open here and get straight to the chase. Geez, thanks, guys. Appreciate that. Hey, now, a catcher has always been one of my favorite positions in baseball. And I never got to play it. I was too fast, believe it or not. My coaches always wanted me in center field to chase down everything that made it through the infield, And it came in handy on those Little League days when, only like 6 kids show up for your team. So you have to go with like 2 outfielders and that. But I always wanted to play catcher. Maybe because of that, my 2 favorite players growing up were Robin Yount, who's jersey I'm currently wearing for all of you guys watching on YouTube, and Gary Carter, actually. My 2 favorite players growing up. Loved them both. Always wanted to wear number 8 in baseball for Gary Carter. But when it comes to fantasy baseball, I'm not sure that there is a more frustrating or exasperating position to have to deal with. Now, catcher's a position. It's definitely a position where real life teams have no problem prioritizing defense over offense. And then we can all see why. If you know baseball, you get why, and that's great for them. But unless you're in some kind of wonky league where putouts and pitch framing are getting scored or something like that, we need bat work here in the fantasy realm. So, when we talked about second base last time out, I talked about possibly targeting specific categories with your positional draft pick and, maybe waiting to take a player at a position until later, and then at that point, picking one to address a specific category weakness there in your build. But that's pretty hard to do at catcher because there really aren't that many guys who you can take late who will actually help in specific categories. But never fear, intrepid explorers. We are going to find some offense for you underneath all that padding and caging. So let's start things off here at number 12 with the Angels' Logan O'Hoppe. Now, he's been a bit of a frustration for fantasy managers. I think we were all kind of hoping he'd be a top flight option from the get-go in his career. But he missed 3 months in his rookie season due to injury, and then last season was kind of a bit up and down as well. But if you take away his rough, and I do mean rough, August, his 2024 season wasn't really all that bad. He still finished as a top 10 catcher in points leagues. Okay. He was hitting 277 before that little August swoon there. And then he hit 266 in September. Now his steamer projections over at Fangraphs have him hitting 238 this season, but I think he beats that. I think he does. He does have 20 home run potential. I really believe that too. He's a guy who really doesn't have a standout category or two. He's just kind of be solid-ish as an option. And he's an option at a necessary position in your lineup. One thing I do worry about him with right now, though, is the presence of Travis d'Arnaud. Travis d'Arnaud is he's the sort of backup who's never really a backup, and he never really kind of goes away. So I don't really love O'Hoppe at his ADP. His ADP right now is 155 overall. That's the 13th round. Spoiler alert, saying that I don't love a guy at his ADP might be a common theme in this episode, just so you're aware. But I do think he's a starting catcher in one catcher leagues there for Logan O'Hoppe. I'm not worried about taking him there. At number 11 is a guy who no one seems real excited about, but he just kind of seems to show up and get the job done, which is actually a very catcher-like quality, right? It's Tyler Stephenson of the Cincinnati Redlegs. Okay. Stephenson, he had a career year in 2024. He set career highs in pretty much all the major counting statistical categories. And normally, now, I'm not one that's going to jump all in on a guy coming off a career year. And I'm not really all in here either, hence his number 11 ranking here. Even though he was catcher 8 in points leagues last season, but there's really nothing in his profile that's going to suggest that last year was necessarily a fluke, even though it was a career year. Now, his season was bolstered quite a bit by a pretty lights out second half. I mean, he had some pretty stellar rankings if you look at just the second half numbers among catchers. And that's probably not like his new norm, right? But his overall production last season, I think, should be repeatable. He's probably, the truth, again, I say it several times, the truth probably lies somewhere in between. His K rate was down last year. His walk rate was up just a bit. And he wasn't crazy lucky on balls in play either. His BABIP was actually lower in 2024 than it was the year before. His line drive percentage was down quite a bit too compared to his career average. So like I said, I think that even though he had those high numbers, he could sustain that level of production overall. He's going to be helped, by the fact that he's going to hit high in the heart of that order for the Reds. And, he's kind of another guy without a standout category, but I think he can keep you afloat kind of across the board. He's probably maybe a little more valuable in point settings than in category settings. But, you guys know, I call catcher one of the tight end positions of fantasy baseball. Stephenson's a tight end. He's a tight end. And, and he's going back half of round 14. So you're not really hurt if you wait that long and take him there. I think he'll, like I said, keep you afloat across categories, and he'll do the job for you. Next up here is a guy that I'm a little higher on than most people. It's the Arizona Diamondbacks' Gabriel Moreno. Now, if you look at his 2024 numbers and his final rankings in that, and you're not impressed, you have to remember, dude missed 6 weeks with an adductor strain. And now if you don't know what an adductor strain is, kids, that's the groin. Okay, so let's all take a second to wince there. Yeah, not a fun injury for any human, let alone an athlete, let alone a guy at catcher who's got to be squatting all the time and getting up and down and up and down. But his efficiency numbers last year were pretty nice, actually. His walk rate was way up to 11.7%. The league average there is actually about 8.6, by the way. So, well over that. His K rate, his strikeout rate was already acceptable, to be honest with you, but he managed to drop that from 19.7 to 14.8. Now, he doesn't do much in the power department. For you guys that get all hopped up on home runs, he's not going to do much there for you. He'll probably get you double digits in home runs, but he's not going to get you much more than that. But he does run really well for a catcher, and he's actually going to steal more bases than the average bear back there behind the plate. So that mitigates that home run damage somewhat, right? It helps balance him out because you're not looking at this position for help in the stolen base category. So the fact that he does steal more than most catchers, or can steal more than most catchers, will help with those home run numbers a little bit. And the other thing that speed does for him is it helps him hit for average too. This is one guy who's kind of an exception to that rule I brought up earlier, because he can hit for legitimate average. he has a career 280, batting average. So, of my top 12, he's going the latest in drafts. He's going at 228 overall right now. That's a 19th round pick, guys. And I think he can help you legitimately in the batting average category. So he's again, an exception to that rule where if you want to wait and take a guy and target a specific category, target batting average and target it with Moreno here. I think with a full season of health behind him, his on-base percentage should be able to get up into, say, like that 370 plus range. That's going to help his run numbers. That's going to help his RBI numbers. I see good things for Moreno here. And I think he can be a valuable strategic pick for you and allow you to stock up elsewhere, while you wait on catcher and while others are caught up in positional runs. You can take advantage of that. He's a guy I like if you're going to go that route with it. But number 9 on our countdown is an old standard. I use old in quotes because I'm much, much older than this gentleman. But he's an old standard at the position. It's JT Realmuto. JT is another guy who missed significant time on the IL last season. He was out over a month after having surgery to repair his right meniscus. He originally tried to play through the pain, and then he kind of thought better of it and had it repaired. So, that missing month, again, it makes his numbers last season look way worse than they actually were. Now, he is 34, and his exit velocity and his launch angles were down last year in 2024, but his hard hit rate actually rose last year compared to 2023. So he's still making good contact. And for the third straight year, his actual batting average was within 2 points of his expected batting average. So, again, he's not getting lucky. He's doing exactly what he should be doing there. And the balls are falling like they should for him. Now, there's some out there who are a little bit worried about the effects of the surgery that he had because he had just 2 steals on 4 attempts. And he'd actually, that's always been a nice part of Realmuto's game is the fact that he actually, for a catcher especially, he's a relatively good base stealer. But, if you look at it, his StatCast sprint speed still measured basically the same as his career numbers have been. And he was actually faster last year, even with the surgery sandwiched around the surgery. His sprint speed last year was actually faster than the COVID year, guys. So, yeah, he might not swipe 20 bases again like he did a couple years ago, but, he still has better than league average wheels, and that's not just for a catcher. That's better than league average across positions. And the Phillies are kind of an aggressive base running team. They were 8th in stolen base attempts last season. So I expect steals to actually remain a part of his game and a big part of his fantasy appeal, actually. I'm not worried about JT Realmuto. He hits a little lower in the lineup than he used to, yeah, but he's still going to be a strong contributor for you across 2-3 categories. He's going as catcher 9 right now. He's going late in the 13th round. Honestly, I'd be thrilled coming out of draft with JT behind the plate for me, especially if I can catch, say, a round or 2 discount on him there. So JT Realmuto, old name, but a good name on the list here. Now, 8th on our list, hey, surprise, surprise, there's a Dodger in the top 12 rankings. It's Will Smith. Last year's catcher 6 in points leagues, made his 2nd straight All-Star appearance. Now he did set a career high in strikeouts. And his batting average, his on-base percentage, his slugging percentage, those were all career lows, but he's still ranked 6th, 4th, and 7th in those categories among qualified catchers, and that's why he is still a fantasy starter. And he did all that, by the way, while ranking 9th in games played among qualifying catchers, so other dudes had many more opportunities than he did, and yet he still outpaced them. Keep that in mind with Will Smith here. Now, I'm a bit concerned. I really am. I'm a little worried that his numbers last season might have been the start of a trend rather than, say, normal year-over-year variance, okay? His slugging percentage, his hard hit rates have both declined every single year since 2020. Last year, he was swinging more freely. He was swinging at more pitches out of the zone than he ever had before. As a result, his swing and strike rate was the highest of his career for a full season. Now, that lineup is still going to be the Dodger lineup, and that means it's going to be stacked. and Smith is still their everyday catcher, he might outplay this ranking, quite honestly. But hey, stop me if you've heard this one. I'm not crazy about spending a mid-8th round pick that it's going to take to have him on my team. Okay? Will Smith is still going to be a solid player. He's probably going to be doing it in somebody else's lineup. I don't know that I want to spend the draft capital it's going to take to get him. Our number 7 player is effectively homeless, or at least, I mean, his ball club is homeless. It's Shea Langeliers, or Shea Langeliers, of the ex-Philadelphia, ex-Kansas City, ex-Oakland, current sort of Sacramento, probably future Las Vegas Athletics. And hey, I mean, we're talking last year's catcher 7 in points leagues, hitting cleanup in a minor league park. What's not to love, right? Well, allow me to proceed. He doesn't, or at least he hasn't, hit for all that great an average thus far in his career, and therein, as we say here, lies the rub. His batting average, his on-base percentage are both likely going to rank among the bottom of the playable catcher pool here, which is going to limit his upside a little bit. But he finished last season 2nd at the position in home runs, 5th in RBIs. But if we want him to kind of take that next step and move up in the runs and the steals categories and that, he simply has to be on base more, and he has to be on base more often than a career 215 batting average and a career 276 on base percentage are going to suggest he's going to be. Now that said, 27-year-old improved his walk and K rates, and he has improved his exit velocity, and he's improved all 3 of those things every single season he's been in the majors. And if his plate discipline could just take even just the slightest jump, dude, it would really help. Now, a word of caution. I have discussed a couple of Tampa Bay Rays and their prospects in their temporary minor league park home. Listen, don't get too excited about the A's playing in Sacramento at Sutter Health Park. Now, the dimensions are real similar to Oakland Coliseum between the lines. I think they're the same to left. I think Sutter Home is like 3 feet deeper straight away, and I think it's like 5 feet closer in right than the Coliseum is. I think the main difference is that there aren't the vast swaths of prime California real estate in foul ground at Sutter Health Park as compared to the Coliseum, which actually might help the batting average there ever so slightly. As guys won't be popping out, on things that would normally be out of the stadium, around the rest of the league. Now, the heat in Sacktown might help some. They're not playing during the day every single day, though, so it's not like it's going to be, blazing ass sun, every single home game. But if you look at the park factors actually suggest that Sutter Health isn't going to play a whole lot different than the Coliseum did. And Oakland, had a well-documented past as a pitcher's haven. So, like I said, don't get too excited about that. But either way, if you want to roster Monsieur Langeliers, you'll be spending a 12th rounder on it. Okay, he kind of kicks off the 3rd draft tier of starting catchers right now, and we'll talk about that in a little bit. But if you want Shea Langeliers, you're going to be spending a 12th rounder on him there. So now we've reached the halfway point in the rankings. We're going to take a real quick toast here. Cheers. And now at number 6, it's a name you're going to be surprised to hear me talk about this early, because he is one of the darlings of the fantasy world. But it's the Baltimore Orioles' Adley Rutschman. Now, admittedly, I am one of the lowest ranks on him anywhere that you're going to find. Okay, he was the 5th best scoring catcher in points leagues last season. He was top overall at the position in 2023. And so you may ask, what gives, Thornton? Well, I will tell you, hypothetical question asker. When you look at him year over year, his numbers weren't all that much worse in 2024 compared to that 2023 season. But his walk rate plummeted. His batting average dipped 27 points. And, you can't score if you're not on base. And so between those two things, his run numbers dipped accordingly. And when I look at it, the problem looks to me, like he was swinging at worse pitches. His hard hit rate and his exit velocity were both down, but his launch angle was way up. So basically, he was swinging at bad pitches, making worse contact, and flying out a bunch. Okay. Now, I just told you he was a top 5 catcher last season, despite all that. Okay. I think his truth is probably somewhere between that top overall catcher performance in 23 and last season's 5th place finish. Maybe closer to that 5th, to be honest. He's going to be fine. He's going to be fine. But do you really want to spend a 5th round pick on fine? I mean, I don't. I think Rutschman is still getting some of that hype of being a great prospect, admittedly a great prospect at a position where we all desperately want to see stars emerge. We all want to see it, and so we're all kind of hoping. You want an example of that from football? Let's take a look at Sam Laporta from 2023 to 2024, right? It's just great prospect at a position, had a great year. We all desperately want to see that person be a superstar. Rutschman's good. Rutschman is really good. He's a good baseball player. You're going to be fine with him as your catcher. I'm just not excited about it. Okay. Again, take that for what you will. But at number 5 for me is the Houston Astros' Yainer Diaz. Okay. Now, Diaz was catcher 4 in points leagues last season. And in 2023, he was catcher 14 overall, but he ranked 7th in points per game. Back to back, pretty dang good seasons, right? I mean, the big thing that everyone's talking about with him is the drop in his power numbers from 2023 to 2024. And he did go from hitting 23 home runs in only 104 games to hitting just 16 in 148 games last season. That 148 games, though, is a key thing to remember. His drop in power mostly looks like it was due to a drop in his launch angles and his barrel rates. His hard hit rate and his contact rate actually both improved last season. He was hitting the ball on the ground a lot more. You'd really like to see him get his fly ball and ground ball rates a lot closer to those 2023 numbers. I mean, that year he was basically right in line with league averages, and had a really good year, really solid year. He's just not fast enough. I mean, he's a catcher. He's not fast enough to be hitting the ball on the ground that much. But with his exit velocities, the home run numbers should return if he can get that launch angle back to like blast off level instead of burning worms, right? He's not going to walk a lot. That's just kind of who he is. Although he did improve that rate ever so slightly in 2024. But he's going to play a lot. I told you, 148 games. That was 4th among catchers last season. And he's got the goods to be a net positive, I think, in every category for you, except, of course, for steals. But that'll be true, especially if he continues to hit above 280 like he has. As a whole, I think that Houston lineup is going to be a bit diminished from last season, but I still like Diaz. I still like him as a worthwhile fantasy contributor. I'm just, again, not crazy about using a 7th round pick to get him. Have I said that before? I feel like I said that before, but not crazy about the 7th rounder that it takes to get him. Number 4 on our Odyssey here has maybe the cushiest job of anybody on this list because he gets to handle the absolutely loaded Mariners starting rotation. It's the Pacific Northwest powerhouse, Cal Raleigh. Now, Raleigh's been a mainstay in top 10 catcher ranks for several seasons here. He was 2nd overall in point settings last season. He set career highs in games played, in hits, in home runs, in RBIs, in steals, in walks, on base percentage. He raised his walk rate from 2023 as well. His numbers were so good that he led all catchers in home runs. He was third in runs scored, and he was second in RBIs, okay? And he's going to be hitting right in the heart of that order. Hopefully that lineup gets a little bit of a boost from Julio Rodriguez, playing like Julio Rodriguez again instead of whatever the heck that was last season. But Raleigh's going to help your power numbers. He's going to play a lot, okay? They'll DH him when he's not behind the plate. But again, another dude you're going to have to spend a 7th-round pick to get, and that's if you want to bet on a repeat of the career year. And he's not going to do a ton for your batting average, even if he was a little bit unlucky on balls in play. So again, take that for what you will. But we've come to our top 3, and kicking off the final quarter is old friend Salvador Pérez. Cheers, Salvador. Now, the most regal Royal is coming off a very nice season. He had his second most games played, second most at-bats, second most hits, second most home runs, second most RBIs of his whole career, right? Not only that, he more than doubled his walk rate year over year from 2023 to the highest of his career. He's still getting good barrel rates. Had his highest average launch angle since 2016. And add all that together, it contributed to a much lower ground ball rate for him, which is good because he's, again, a catcher and slow. Now, there's still some wiggle room there for his numbers to actually improve, too. If you look at his StatCast numbers, his expected batting average and his expected slugging were both higher than his actual totals. So he's got some wiggle room, like I said. Now, the old man, old, again, in quotes, is literally slowing down. But he's still swinging the bat well. He's playing a little bit more DH, a little bit more first base, and that's going to help him maintain those games played, and thus that's going to help maintain those opportunities at the plate, even when he's not behind it. So, that lineup should play up a little, I think, with Jonathan India at the top. They still have all-world Bobby Witt Jr. I like Perez to repeat as a steady top-level fantasy option there at catcher, but I'm still not thrilled about having to take him as part of a 7th-round run, okay? So now I need you to listen carefully as I reveal the number 2 player in our catcher rankings, because you do not want to get him mixed up with number 1, and you'll find out why in just a second here. But number 2 on our list is Willson Contreras of the St. Louis Cardinals. Now, Willson Contreras had a rough 2024. Only played in 84 games. He missed most of May and June with a forearm fracture after J.D. Martinez hit him with a bat. Now, it was calm down. It was an accidental hit. It was during an at-bat. It wasn't like it was a double dragon villain assault or anything like that. He didn't walk up and whack him. But either way, it was a broken freaking arm, right? So then after that, he came back, played for a while, and then ended up out for the year after fracturing his right middle finger on a hit by pitch from Pablo Lopez. So that meant that you look at his numbers, he only finished as catcher 15 overall in points leagues, but he far outstripped that in points per game. When he was on the field, his slugging numbers remained pretty steady. His walk rate remained elite. So, he gets on base. I'm not crazy about the lineup around him. St. Louis hasn't done much there this offseason. And they're looking to still shed Nolan Arenado, but he'll pull his own weight and then some there. Big thing for him is that he's going to be playing first base while eligible at catcher for us. And that's going to be like a cheat code, guys. Now, provided he stays healthy, and that move to first base should help that, he should see by far the most plate appearances in a season for his career. And he was raking in between all those medical mishaps last season. Right now, he's going after Rutschman, after Raleigh, after Diaz, after Will Smith, and he's going after them by about a round or more, depending on who you're talking about there. But he's going after them in drafts. Now, that might not hold as we approach opening day if other people get savvy, and as people obviously hear this episode, they'll all be rushing out, and it's going to spread like wildfire. But just be aware that right now, in my opinion, Willson Contreras is shaping up to be possibly the best value at catcher and one of the best values in all of baseball in the top half of your fantasy drafts in 2025 here. So we talked about Willson. We've come to the top spot. And our number one ranked fantasy catcher is William Contreras of my Milwaukee Brewers. All right. Now, if you've been paying attention to fantasy baseball the last few years, obviously there's not a whole lot left to be said about William Contreras, and you shouldn't be shocked by this ranking. But allow me to say things anyway. My show. Since he took the job full-time in Milwaukee, he was fantasy catcher 2 in 2023, and he was fantasy catcher 1 in 2024. You look at last season, he led all qualified catchers in plate appearances, in runs, in steals, in walk rate, in on-base percentage, in slugging percentage. He set multiple statistical career highs, and he did that with the lowest BABIP, batting average on balls in play, of the last 3 seasons for him, and without some kind of crazy, weird, unsustainable StatCast numbers, okay? I mean, his launch angle was a minuscule 6.1, and he still popped a career-high 23 home runs. Coolest thing about him, though, if you look at things, he was the 17th best scoring hitter overall in fantasy points leagues. And that is insane for a catcher, okay? William Contreras would have been a high-level option at literally every other batting position in the lineup, including he would have been a top 2 option at any of the infield bases. He would have been shortstop 6 overall. He would have been outfield 6 overall, and he would have been DH 5 overall. He is literally the only actual impact player at catcher. Okay, and he is going to give you a lineup advantage over your opponent no matter what type of scoring format you play. I mean, 2-time All-Star, back-to-back Silver Slugger. He could even threaten double-digit steals. I mean, with the Brewers' aggressive offensive philosophy, they run a ton. Second most, I believe, in the league last year. And he can, and you know, he's a smart base. He's not super fast. He's not JT Realmuto. He's not Gabriel Moreno. But he's a smart base runner. The Brewers will run him on like the back half of double steals and that kind of thing. Now it's going to take a 3rd rounder to get him. But in contrast to what I've said with most of these guys, that price might be worth it when you take into account the positional advantage that you're going to get with him, and even honestly, to some extent, the psychological advantage you're going to get when the other guys, are disappointed seeing him come off the board. At any rate, I will tell you this: I will not let him fall past me in the 3rd. Although, I mean, a 2nd rounder, maybe too rich, maybe. But again, it's up to your philosophy. But when we talk about that philosophy, that's going to bring me to just a real quick word here on drafting your catcher this season. Now, there's like 3 tiers. I've kind of mentioned it before. There's like 3 tiers or pockets going on for starting catchers. William Contreras, obviously the elite of the elite. He's going in the 3rd round, like I just said. And then Adley Rutschman is going off in the 5th. And they're kind of like the 2 highest. They're the 2 highest ones that people are jumping on. Then there's kind of like a couple round lull until there's a big run of guys in like the 7th and 8th rounds. Guys like Salvador Pérez, Raleigh, Yainer Diaz, Will Smith. And then there's another big gap between that 7th, 8th round until there's another run on the position that kind of starts in the 12th and 13th round. And that's where Shea Langeliers, Realmuto, O'Hoppe, those guys are going. Now, this is why I said I'm not crazy on spending that draft capital on most of these guys. William Contreras is worth it. He's worth it. Positional scarcity equals positional advantage, right? He's worth that pick. I have Rutschman ranked 6th at the position overall. Why would I want to blow that high a pick on a guy that I have ranked 6th at the position, right? A 5th rounder for a guy that I think is going to land farther back at a lower tier position. And if you look at the guys that are going in the 7th, none of those guys that you're taking in the 7th is going to give you that big an advantage over any of the others that you're taking there or later, even in my opinion. Now, Willson Contreras is coming off the board in the 9th, and I think he outscores all of them in front of him except his brother. Okay? So what I would say is let everyone else panic pick a lesser fantasy asset there in that round 7 run. I mean, you're talking about it's a lesser fantasy option compared to Willson. It's a lesser fantasy asset compared to the other names, the other positions that you can be picking there. Don't fall for the run. And here's a little note, a little spoiler alert. That's true no matter what position we're talking about. Don't fall for the run. Sit back and grab Willson. And if you miss him, hey, you got plenty of time to snag Realmuto for some multi-category juice, in a few rounds later. Like I said, 3 rounds later. Or, I mean, you could really sit back, like I said, take Moreno for that batting average help. And you can, in the interim, while you wait to take him in the 19th round, fill up other lineup spots, fill up other categories. Like I said, take him for the batting average help there. There's only a couple guys at this position who can actually be difference makers at the position. So don't make the mistake of over prioritizing a big name or panicking during that 7th round run when it comes just because, I haven't filled up my starting lineup yet. It's 7th round. Of course you haven't filled up your starting lineup yet. Why would you spend that pick? Why would you spend that high a pick on a position that isn't necessarily going to actively help your team? No matter who you take there. Be smarter than that. Be better than that. Don't fall for it, okay? But that's going to do it for us here on Straight to the Chase for this time around. Hey, remember, check out the Fantasy Baseball Advice Network channel on YouTube. Like us, subscribe, hit those notifications. You can look up Straight to the Chase on your favorite podcast app. And please, hey, go to podchaser.com. Search for Straight to the Chase. Leave us a 5-star review. That is really going to help us spread the word and help others chase greatness all season long, too. Also, because I'm a company man, get over to fantasybaseballadvice.com. That's where you're going to find all my baseball content over there, podcasts and articles. You sign up for a membership, you'll have access to our fantasy sports only media platform, social media platform. You can friend me on there. You can ask me questions on fantasy baseball, fantasy football, WNBA fantasy if you like. You can curate your feed, follow only the sports you care about, but you'll be able to interact with other fantasy sports enthusiasts and content creators as well. You can download the app and always be connected on the go. Again, that's fantasybaseballadvice.com, like it says in the ticker down below. Follow me personally everywhere at STTChaseFFB, like Straight to the Chase, FFB for fantasy football on the other end. And you can even find me at Chase Thornton on Untapped. You can see what we're serving here at the Mott and Bailey in the meantime. But until next time, hey, we are going to get up and get out of here. Go.
We are here. FantasySportsAdvice.com, offering the best fantasy sports social media platform. Why join endless Discord communities or the trolls of Reddit? Fantasy Sports Advice is a community designed to help you win with 24/7 support. Go to FantasySportsAdvice.com and become a pro member for unlimited access. Again, go to FantasySportsAdvice.com today.